So a very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today, our show bringing you all the latest news and events happening all around the African continent. I'm Angie Meher and I'm joining you for today's edition of the show. As usual, we'll begin straight away with a look at some of the news making the headlines and beginning with a look at news from home, where the Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry held a press conference with the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock on Tuesday. He said the only way to end the suffering in Gaza was to seal a ceasefire. We have more details in this report.
Shoukry said any attempt to resettle the Palestinians to neighboring countries is unacceptable. Speaking at a news conference with visiting German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, Shoukry said the dire circumstances witnessed by the people of Gaza and attempts to resettle them elsewhere counter all international laws. He said Cairo backs efforts to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. For her part, Baerbock said the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza cannot continue and concrete measures are needed now to ensure aid gets to the people there. She lauded Cairo's role in the release of hostages and negotiating a ceasefire agreement. She said Germany supports all efforts to end the war on Gaza and to prevent a spillover of the conflict. She also said the international community has an obligation to organize security in Gaza after the war, and what she termed a reformed Palestinian Authority must play a crucial role in the future.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for this afternoon, Mr. Raouf Ghaffar, our political analyst. It's a very good afternoon to you, sir. Okay, we do have a problem with the line. We will hopefully get him on the phone. Let's move to more news. South Africa's genocide case against the Israeli aggression. South Africa has set up a landmark legal showdown at the International Court of Justice after accusing Israel of genocidal acts in its Gaza campaign. We have more details in this report.
South Africa has requested emergency orders from the ICJ, provisional measures in the jargon. This means the court does not have to necessarily agree with Pretoria's fundamental case. It must instead judge whether there is a risk of irreparable prejudice to the rights of the Palestinians. Assistant Professor of Public International Law at Leiden University said that at the provisional measures stage, the court would not be making a determination that a genocide is unfolding in Gaza. Pretoria has asked the court to issue several orders for the Israelis to immediately suspend their Gaza offensive, to stop forced displacement, to enable humanitarian access, and to preserve evidence. The ICJ can order all of the measures requested by South Africa. It could decline to order anything. It could order something completely different or even decide it is not competent to judge. After the court decides whether or not to apply emergency measures, it will then look at the broader case on the merits. South Africa has charged that the Israelis are in breach of the UN Genocide Convention. The decision of the ICJ, often known as the World Court, are binding upon countries and cannot be appealed. However, the ICJ has no way of enforcing its rulings and they are sometimes completely ignored. For example, the court ordered Russia to stop its invasion of Ukraine 1 month after it started. An international law and war crimes expert said any decision would be at a symbolic level. The ICJ is not known for its speed, but provisional measures take priority over all other cases, and a decision can be relatively quick, a matter of weeks. A ruling of the broader case on the merits, on the other hand, will probably take several years.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now we are delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, our political analyst. It's a very good afternoon to you, Doctor.
Good afternoon to you, madam.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this afternoon. And of course, today the Foreign Minister held a press conference with the German Foreign Minister discussing the latest developments, of course, in the Gaza Strip. First and foremost, how do you see the timing of this visit by the German Foreign Minister to Egypt, sir?
Well, I mean, Germany has been changing positions in the last few weeks, but I think that finally, from what we heard through the press conference, etc., that things are moving in what we think is the right direction. They join our point of view that peace has to take place,
yes,
and atrocities have to stop, and a reasonable resolution and the settlement to the case has to be reached. So I think that is, in my humble opinion, what I gathered from the meeting and the press conference.
Absolutely. Right. Dr. Raouf, as you said, Cairo, of course, said the only way to end the suffering in Gaza is through settling a ceasefire. How do you see prospects for a near ceasefire in Gaza, considering the situation on the ground?
I cannot see that, unfortunately. And now, in my opinion, once again, the Prime Minister of Israel is taking things very personal, and his, of course, political future is very much at stake. That is why his position as a Prime Minister is very much linked with with continuing this war.
Yes.
He knows, I'm sure he knows, that he will not be victorious, he will not win this war, but he doesn't want people to think that. And the longer it takes, the longer he stays in office, and that is why. Unless he is put under severe pressure from the West and from the United States particularly, I think things will keep on for some time, unfortunately.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. Dr. Raouf, now the German Foreign Minister expressed support for the efforts to end, the war or have some sort of ceasefire, and also called on the need to prevent a spillover of the conflict to other areas in the region. How do you see this real threat of a spillover?
It exists. In my opinion, it is far-fetched because it's not to the benefit of anybody. But it will continue for some time. We don't like it, but unfortunately, I understand. Of course, the German people and the Western people, maybe they did not forget that Hamas started. But again, what terrible reaction they faced has made a lot of people change their mind. And this is a very good positive point for the better of the areas in total. So, and that is what we sensed from the foreign minister of Germany. They are starting to change, and they are now convinced that the reaction was 100 times more severe and more cruel than whatever started the whole thing.
Indeed. Right. Let me ask you, Doctor, how do you weigh South Africa's move to file a suit against the Israelis in the world courts?
They deserve it. I mean, Israel deserves to be condemned by the International Criminal Court for their genocide. This is something against all human rights or against all international laws, against all, you name it. There is no ethics. There is nothing to do with the right of. I mean, any international law cannot accept 1/10 of what happened.
Absolutely.
And I think that they should be. There should be a case, and really, I hope. Israel should be punished for what they have been doing.
Right. Dr. Raouf, now, the United States has lambasted South Africa's suit as meritless. How do you read their stance?
Tell me, can you repeat the question?
The United States has said that South Africa's suit is meritless and expects nothing to come out of it. How do you read the American stance, Doctor?
I mean, the American point of view was always biased, was always for and pro-Israel, regardless of what Israel does. It's the spoiled child of Israel, of the United States. They have so much influence in the States that no decision would be taken against them at all. And anything that raises, any voice that is raised just to reproach anything regarding Israel is always rejected. We have seen how the veto was used, 1 against 14, simply to reach a ceasefire. So if they do not accept a ceasefire, we don't expect them to understand that what is happening is against all human beings.
Indeed. Now, what do you see the impact of such a situation? Do you see such steps influencing, for example, the Israeli position, even though Israel is not an entity, as an entity is not a member of the ICC? How does this translate with regards to any ruling by the court?
I mean, the ruling is a ruling. I mean, whether they are members or are not members, at least in front of the whole world, they are condemned for what they said, for what they do, for their actions. And it's enough to expose them in front of everybody. Whether they abide or they don't, whether they accept or they don't, this is their problem. But the whole world community hopefully will reach a final decision that these people are breaching every possible human right and law that exists. And this is enough for everybody to know that what Israel is doing is something atrocious, something terrible, and I think if it happens, it will help speed up any settlement or any solution for the problem.
Indeed. Finally, Dr. Raouf, in your opinion, what steps need to be taken urgently on the ground now to help the Palestinians easing, their plight?
First of all, the quantity of humanitarian aid has to increase because apparently it's not enough. And so from one side, it should be increased. The world community on the other side should exert more pressure on Israel to stop and reach a ceasefire and then discuss the future of the area calmly and with taking into consideration the benefit of everybody.
Right. I'd like to thank you very, very much, our guest, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and for joining us this afternoon. And to wrap up today's edition of Africa Today, our final news item, this time from Sudan. Since Sudan's war spread to Al Jazeera state south of Khartoum, farmers have watched their livelihood wither away. After war erupted in April last year between the regular army and the paramilitary rapid support forces just south of Khartoum, the area has become a sanctuary for more than 500,000 people, according to the United Nations. We have more details in this report.
According to the UN's World Food Programme, WFP, nearly 18 million people are currently facing acute hunger, with 5 million at emergency levels of hunger in Sudan. Although a famine has not been officially declared, there is no other way around what's about to happen in Sudan, according to Norwegian Refugee Council NRC Country Director William Carter. On Saturday, U.S. agency USAID's Famine Early Warning Systems Network said fighting in central and eastern Sudan, which is the country's most important region for crop production, is a serious threat to national food availability. The NRC's Carter is more direct. He said unless peace magically descends on Sudan, there is going to be famine. At this point, it is not just air strikes and urban warfare killing people. The fighting has killed more than 12,190 people, according to a conservative estimate from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. There are no figures for indirect casualties, including those who have died due to the nationwide breakdown of essential services, infrastructure and hospitals, 80% of which remain out of service. All along the highway from Khartoum to Wad Madani, the RSF has set up checkpoints, seized land and besieged entire communities. The fight for Wad Madani began and hundreds of thousands of people were forced to flee from the state. When the army quickly retreated from the state capital, the RSF took over swathes of the agricultural land, laying siege to entire villages and leaving farmers unable to tend to vital crops.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of today's edition of Africa Today. You were in the company of myself, Anju Meher. Thank you for joining us.